Hello, everyone. Welcome to our episode of It's Me, Not You. Hello, Jake.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
So, for today's topic, we're going to talk about walking alongside a deity in your path. And I know this is something that is very near and dear to Jake, and it
hmm
is also near and dear to Melissa, and not as near and dear to Rachel. I work with
Yeah.
deities, but I'm not walking along the path with the deity. So, Jake's deity is currently adjusting the camera.
Yes, it's turning
So,
my whole world upside down over here.
So
On
Jake,
brand.
let's talk about because I know you're really good about like picking a deity, working one on one with that deity, kind of like
Mhm,
having a solidified practice.
mhm.
Talk us through that.
Yeah. So let's see, where do I want to start? So I'll preface this with saying that in my personal work, I usually will work with one staple deity in my practice. That's just in general. And then when I'm kind of working through other periods of my life, or when I feel that I'm kind of resonating with a new mythology, I will sit with that deity and I will kind of come up with a practice. Or, for example, Kuan Yin was one that I was really working with very heavily for quite some time. So I really took that step back to be very focused and very leading with intention in my practice. So I would redecorate my altar with decks that I felt resonated with Kuan Yin's frequency or with her message. Ones of compassion, ones of joy, being able to step out of the seriousness and just be able to giggle at things. Um, so I would really kind of set up everything in her vein. And then when working with the deity or deciding to walk with them, I incorporate them into my just whole setup practice, right? So if I'm meditating just to find my baseline in the morning, I will use that deity to be the one that I'm connecting to. So I'll be like, okay, universe, spirit, Kuan Yin, I'm bringing you in, I'm giving you thanks. I might give a little offering or whatever that might be. And then I will be in that period of time, I'll be asking that deity for guidance. So whether that be in my readings, my professional readings that I do, workshops, channeled messages, I will kind of have that deity as my point of contact. Um, and there's many times that I'll be approached by a deity who I will not feel guided to share that publicly, or in a working space, which is totally fine. And I think that's where a lot of the most profound deity work goes. White Buffalo Calf Woman is who I really always walk through this life with. Um, and I will also say that there is a funny thing chatting with other practitioners or witches or magical people who work with certain deities. Over time, you really find that they kind of mannerisms shift and aesthetic appearance kind of shifts and really finds that it aligns itself with that deity that they walk with, which I think makes perfect sense. But I always think it's really interesting. You can always really tell, who works a lot with Venus, or who works a lot with Isis, for example. Practitioners who work with Isis will usually be very glamorous. The makeup is beautiful, the hair is beautiful, the fashion is very intentive. Um, so it's really interesting just to see how that dynamic shifts everything. But yeah, so working with deity for me, just the way that I am set up in this spooky life is a non-negotiable. And it's involves a heavy amount of my practice. um
How about for
Now
you,
I'm rambling
Melissa?
because I'm getting all excited, but
Okay.
yeah, how about you, Melissa?
So, can you guess who mine is? Rachel, my favorite one.
Bridget.
Yes.
I'm like when she was talking about redoing her kitchen, all I could think about was Bridget, 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 Bridget,
It
Bridget,
is.
Bridget, 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 Bridget.
It is. I mean, that is so for me, a deity is a teacher. That's how
Mhm,
I approach them. I have God, my above, the angels and the deities are every other group that's a teacher. So the main one I do walk with is Bridget. And I like her because she's a bridge. She's a bridge from the old to the new. She was a Catholic saint and she was also a goddess, like in pagan times. So, well, still, we can't get into time. That could be a whole thing. But um, and I like her because she's multifaceted. She gives to people, but she also knows how to take care of herself. She can be fierce and she can be creative. She's a healer and she's a sword maker. Um, So I really try to lean into her for my daily things. And yeah, that is a big reason why I'm redoing my kitchen right now. My kitchen is the heart of my home. You know, we don't have a hearth. Like Bridget was the goddess of the hearth. So the hearth was the place where we used to make our foods, communities, families come together. Now that's our kitchen space. So that is really, but it's not red. I'm not doing red. It's blue. And it's funny when Jake was talking about looking like them, I'm like, oh, my red hair.
Uh-huh. It's so interesting to find those like commonalities, right?
Right. And then I think the rest of it really is different ones have shown up, and then I discern, like, are they good for me? And then I ask, you know, who are you? What are you here to teach me? And now it's gotten to the point where if I see Saint Michael, I'm out. I don't Irish goodbye. I just leave, because that just tells me get out now.
Mhm.
You know, if I see some of the Egyptians, and I didn't study mythology. So the first time that I had this image of a peregrine falcon head with eclipse of the moon in one eye and eclipse of the sun in the other, I was like, what the hell is this? And then I'm like, oh, that's Horus. I didn't know. I was, you know, I'm Catholic. Like, I didn't know any of that stuff. So now whenever I see them, I know I cross over. I
Mhm.
don't mix my pantheons. It's not like I'm working with Norse and with Egyptian at the same time. It's just that group, like you said, Jake.
Mhm.
But they each have something different to teach me for what I'm going through, for what I need to do for others. And sometimes it's that energy for connecting with others, you know, with their
Mhm.
spirit guides, that they come through to again be that bridge, but just in a different way.
Mhm.
So if somebody's looking to maybe work with a deity, like what kind of recommendations do you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, all my go-to methods are usually if you feel that you are guided to work with a certain one, or let's just say that out of nowhere you are finding a particular interest in maybe a specific deity or a certain region of the world, and then slowly but surely you're kind of getting onto that pulse. We're like, oh, I have a feeling that I'm being pulled towards this mythology or this system here. Let me take a look at that to find who I'm finding inspiration from. I always love to read stories. So, whatever deity that I'm walking into, I will look up old anthropological stories, studies, or academic journals about a certain deity in the mythos. Just because I feel like reading the story really does help you kind of connect and feel very aligned with that energy. Um, I also even love working with finding a stone that resonates with them. So if it's a color that the deity resonates with, finding a stone that maybe is that color that I feel represents that spirit for me, and then I will carry it with me, or I will meditate with it. Or for folks who like to be a little bit more crafty, you can always make an anointing oil. There's several forums, hundreds of thousands of forums online that you could look up specific deities that witches have already went through and recommended the herbs that they're associated with, things like that. So you can make oils to feel connected with them, anoint that, or you can burn certain scents, right? Especially our Greek and Egyptian deities. The scents, aromatherapy is such a big staple in both of those myths, right? So I find that those are really easy ways to get that into that space. Or you might even find playing music that aligns with that, or
Flowers.
yeah, flowers, music, any of those things. Portraits, pictures. I like to have artwork. I've got several pieces of artwork of Kuan Yin, of White Buffalo Calf Woman, and several of the other deities that I've worked with. Sometimes artwork, or even finding a deck that resonates with them, the Kuan Yin Oracle, all kinds of different ones. So it's really just finding ways that you can find a physical grounding of the idea or of the metaphor of the deity, and then really just kind of find what makes you feel connected, what resonates with you.
It sounds like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can kind of go online, trust your, use discernment and say, okay, I'm going to get this oil. I'm going to get this image. I'm going to get this.
Yeah, crafting something that makes you feel connected to them, writing a letter to them, or journaling about them, listening to music and just channeling that spirit. Let them tell you their story. Q&A with them, right? Yeah, for me,
That's
I've
fine.
got very specific staple ways to kind of feel connected, and it really does do the trick for me.
Nice. And how about for you, Melissa? Any piece of advice that you have?
Really the same. I mean, it's your personal relationship. What do you do with your best friend? You know,
Mm-hmm.
how do you connect to the teachers that have meant the most in your life? That's really what you're establishing. It's conversation. You know, I have St. Bridget's cross above my door. I've talked about her book like a million times, but I do the prayer over Maggie's bed. For blessing your animals. And I really give a lot of sanctity to my hearth area. Like, what's my home? And my Bridget has the flame of the heart. And for me, that is my kitchen. That is the heart of my home. So it's really, I'm putting energy into that right now because it's putting energy into that relationship with her, and it's putting energy into healing my own heart. So you just have to do whatever you're called to. If you don't have money for things, you don't have to do any of that. You can just go pick flowers. You can, every deity has something that they're over. So whether it's a saint, whether it's a goddess, whether it's a god, whether it's an ascended master, they all have something that they're associated with. Maybe they're associated with sunflowers. So just go hang out with sunflowers, or a yellow flower in a field that reminds you of a sunflower. It's bringing that practicality, because if you get it to be like, well, if I have to do all these things, like that's never going to happen. That's not the point. The point is using what's with you, what's around you, and knowing that you're not alone on your journey. Knowing that there are, angels, deities, things on the other side that are here to help you with your life path. And I know sometimes it can feel very alone, but that's why you have ones that walk with you. And even if you don't resonate that one's walking with you, you never walk alone. I'm not being creepy. You never walk alone.
You never walk alone, because us three are following you wherever you go.
Right.
Have you ever found that a deity has appeared to you that you didn't want to work with?
Not that I didn't want to work with, but that I didn't immediately appreciate, right? Or that I might have had trepidation too. And sometimes people who, grew up in Western theology, Catholicism, Christianity, things like that, you might be a little bit more resistant to some energies when they come through, whatever that might be, or maybe out of a place of fear, you might respond a certain way. Like I know for many years ago when I was approached by Lilith, that was a really profound energy. And then shortly following that was the morning star, the fallen angel. He was a very fascinating experience. And then even some interesting ones like Athena, I remember when she had approached. And at that moment I was doing a lot of work with Medusa in my bones, bone reading, not in my bones. And so that was a really interesting. Yes, it was a very interesting, contradictory. And I think that in a way, like interacting with all of these deities really helps you explore different parts of humanity, different parts of the life story, understanding perspectives, understanding pain, triumph, the hero's journey from another perspective. It's really beautiful work. We could go on, such a short episode does not do it justice, right? I could do a TED talk on working with deity, but essentially it's an opportunity for you to really grow, mirroring another experience in this life, right? An archetype, if you will. And I think for some people, even if you don't necessarily feel like you're being approached by one or that you are gravitating towards a specific deity, maybe just start from ground zero and say, okay, do I have any heritage that connects me with a certain culture that I want to kind of dive into, that I want to explore further? Or is there a way of being that I want to lean into? Do I want to step into self-compassion, into love? Do I want to work with Venus in this time to really own my body, own my sexuality? Am I looking to work with Amaterasu, the Japanese goddess of the sun? Do I need to work on self-esteem? Do I need to work on point of view, seeing the sunnier side, illuminating perspective? Take a look at the things that you maybe are feeling that you are missing out on, or feeling that you would like to walk into, step into, and do some research. See who calls out to you. There's hundreds of deities for even just one specific thing. So I would encourage you to explore, see what resonates. You'll feel it when you know.
Yeah. And any last words, Melissa?
I just think it's when Jake said to study your own genealogy. So I was on my treadmill and I saw this guy missing an arm and he just pointed, like, drew an up arrow. And I'm like, what is this? And then he said he was a sky deity. Okay. And it was Tyr, which is Norse. And I'm like, I was into all the Celtic. I'm like, I'm not Norse. And I heard, go do your DNA test. So I did my DNA test. Sure enough, there's this one whole spot of like that northern sea that's just circled. So it's basically Viking DNA. So I was like, okay, whoops. So kind of fun to explore on that. And, you know, Jake said too, I was raised Catholic and have a lot of that faith. So when I did see a deity, it was Oshun. And I didn't know who it was. And I looked it up and I'm like, oh my God, it's a voodoo one. I can't do this. I freaked out totally and just said, okay, you know, I am not ready for this. I don't want to do this. And it was fine. So I just wasn't at that point of openness or understanding to do it. So
yeah,
I guess just keep it simple. Understand that, you know, mythology, deities, they're stories that help us get through experiences that we do and that we experience in our own lives. So I would focus on, where are you having the most trouble? Well, it's with relationships. Well, what's the relationship with yourself? As within, so without. So what is that, and who and where is it? Do you feel abandoned? Like, what is that part? And find one of them that resonate with that to help you heal it, so that the things in your life become easier to move through.
I love that.
I like that.
That's beautiful. That's a good place to end it on. Thank you so much, Melissa.
I love that.
Bye.